no podemos estar más orgullosos de tener un autor del prestigio internacional de Peter Singer. Es posiblemente uno de los filósofos más influyentes actualmente a nivel mundial. Sus libros han sido publicados, muchos de ellos, a más de 20 idiomas. Como él dice en el prólogo, que ha escrito especialmente para esta edición, es una obra que puede ser de inspiración para lectores en general y todo tipo de activistas, personas comprometidas, en definitiva, con el cambio social que necesitamos para construir un mundo mejor, o por lo menos para poder afrontar la crisis que estamos viviendo, crisis de valores a nivel de ética y crisis medioambiental. No se pueden tratar de manera aislada, todo está interrelacionado y creo que ese es el verdadero valor que aporta tener a Peter Singer con nosotros. Es todo lo que podemos aprender de él como filósofo, pero también como experto en ética y como pues una de las personas que más ha contribuido a ofrecernos herramientas para poder entender que se puede salir, pero tenemos que hacerlo con una mirada transversal y comprometida.
¿Qué es la colección Liberánima de Plaza y Valdés? Pues es una colección en la que lo que queremos, y esta misión se está cumpliendo, es traer autores y obras a España y Latinoamérica que empoderen al movimiento de derechos animales, al movimiento de protección animal. Creemos que es fundamental generar un debate en la sociedad sobre la realidad que viven los animales, pero también sobre cómo el movimiento de respeto hacia los animales puede aprender de estrategias pasadas, como el gran trabajo que hizo Henry Spira. Peter Singer ha influido sólidamente en igualdad animal. Nos ha dado la base filosófica que necesitábamos para poder ayudar a los animales. Peter Singer nos recuerda la importancia de la filosofía, de comprender lo que defendemos. Y con esta obra de Henry Spira también la importancia de la acción. Necesitamos saber lo que defendemos, pero quizás más importante, necesitamos actuar. Así que con esa reflexión os dejo con Peter Singer.
You see there Henry with a cow, which gives the impression of Henry as a great animal lover, but that is actually not his background. His background was much more as somebody who worked initially for oppressed people wherever he found them. The idea being that in all of these cases you have a dominant group, a more powerful group, which uses its power to take advantage of and exploit those with less power. And of course we're very familiar with this in terms of racism, and the slave trade in particular is the most blatant example of slavery of racism. And we're familiar with it from the male dominance over women. But we don't recognize that the same kind of phenomenon goes on in our attitudes to animals, that we are more powerful than them, we develop an ideology that we think justifies us in using them. For example, we quote from the Dominion verse in Genesis, and then we disregard their interests. So the idea here is that if any being can suffer pain, as a conscious being who can experience pain, then that pain is just as bad whether that being is a member of our own species, a human being, or a non-human animal capable of feeling pain. And it was done at the Museum of Natural History in New York City. And this was an ideal target because it was very vulnerable to public pressure. The public didn't even know that experiments were going on at the museum. They were just going there to see the exhibits. But Henry could use them to put pressure on the museum, and he succeeded in stopping these experiments. The first time really, at least in the United States, that a protest had ever stopped experiments on animals. Henry was always careful to get advice on all his campaigns from as many experts as he could find. He always wanted to be fully informed so he could anticipate any objections that would be made to what he was asking for. Fortunately, he still lived long enough to see the book published, but he did not live much longer than that. Now, I wanted to say a little bit about why Henry shifted from concentrating on experiments on animals to looking at farmed animals. And the reason was that he was concerned about the numbers. He wanted to help as many animals as he could with the efforts he was making. The number of animals raised for food, this is just vertebrate animals raised for food, is about 1,000 times the number of animals used in experiments. So that's why Henry wanted to campaign for farmed animals once he'd established himself and his track record in experiments. How could McDonald's ever deal with an animal activist? Their whole business is in producing meat, hamburgers. But he again thought about what could they do that would improve animals, the lives of animals, and he asked them to get eggs from hens not kept in cages. So his ask to McDonald's was to move away from that system and to go for eggs from hens that at least were not in cages. And that, as he says here, could affect 2 billion eggs per year, about 4% of US egg production. So you're talking about millions of hens having better lives as a result. And I often use this slide to talk to students who may feel that there is some conflict between living a good life for them and being an effective altruist. But I think Henry's example shows that in fact it can be a very fulfilling and meaningful life to live your life in order to have a positive impact on the world.
Esto es lo que nos quería contar Peter Singer para tratar de resumir de alguna manera el contenido del libro, también el perfil humano y psicológico de Henry Spira, su amigo, su alumno y en realidad también su maestro, porque una de las cosas que me gustaría destacar es que Peter Singer vio personificado en la figura de Henry Spira lo que él había escrito a nivel teórico, cómo él había reflexionado desde la teoría, desde el mundo filosófico, con las ideas para proponer un mundo mejor, y vio en la figura de Henry Spira a alguien que lo estaba poniendo en práctica.